All right. So the essential questions for today. Welcome everybody. It's completing the square. We're learning completing the square today. Can I complete the square of a quadratic? And how do I complete the square to solve the equation? The skill of completing the square you can use, and we're going to learn how to use it to solve the equation or to solve our equation. But we can always rely on factoring and quadratic formula, right? Which are easier than completing the square. But the skill that you're going to learn by completing, or the skill of completing the square, you guys need to learn because that is the basics of what 12.1 is, and that's on a circle, and we're going to cover that next time, and we'll cover those essential questions next time. But we need this skill to move on to learn about circles, okay? So I have a little activity for you guys here, and what I want you to do before I go ahead and give you this activity, completing the square is based off of two special forms, which are similar, okay? A squared plus 2ab plus b squared, and a squared minus 2ab plus b squared. The a squared plus 2ab, that breaks out to be a plus b quantity squared. And a minus 2ab plus b squared breaks out to be a minus b quantity squared. Okay, so those two guys are perfect square trinomials. Okay, they're called perfect square trinomials. And what I want you to do is to get with a partner and try to complete this perfect square trinomial. Okay, so I give you only two terms in both examples, right? So essentially what I want you to do is build that left-hand side of the equation so then we can make it into the right-hand side. Okay, I am being vague on purpose. I want you guys to try it out without any assistance. So go ahead and get with a partner and try that out. Okay, so here to complete the square to form a perfect square trinomial, what we have to do, we're given x squared plus 4x, right, as our problem. And we have to build this left-hand side of the equation. So you can think about this being a squared plus 2ab. Okay, so what we have to do is we have to find my b squared. So plus blank, okay, to figure out my b squared. So I know my a equals x, right? So if a equals x and 4x equals 2ab, then that means 2b equals 4, correct? Yeah. So if I solve for b, I'm going to divide by 2 on both sides, and b equals 2, right? So my b value is 2 when I divide by 2. And then I'm going to square it to get my b squared. So b squared equals 2 squared, which is 4. So that equals 4. X. Because if a is x, right? So based off of this first one, a is x. So I can just cancel out this a and cancel out this x, and 4 equals 2b. That's how I got that. And I just solve for b. Then we'll figure that out. Okay. So I got b squared as 4 now. This side of the equation is x squared plus 4x plus 4, right? And that breaks out to be, if we use the special form up there, that breaks out to be x plus 2 quantity squared. If you don't know how the special form is worked, factor this out. Give me two numbers that multiply to 4 and gets me a sum of 4. 2 and 2, right? So it's going to be, after you factor it out, x plus 2 times x plus 2. Okay, you're going to factor it out this way. And because we have 2x plus 2s, they're just being squared. Okay? So if you think about this one, again, my a equals x because a squared equals x squared minus 2ab, right? So if 2ab equals 8x and a equals x, then again, 2b equals 8, right? I want to put that negative in there too. Yeah, negative 2b equals negative 8. So then we divide by negative 2, divide by negative 2, b equals 4. We square that value to get 16. So I know I'm going to add 16 to here. Okay. In order for me to get this special form, that's the point of this. Okay. I want this special form, which is the last term for both special forms are b squared. That's why I got b and I squared it, and I'm going to add it to the backside of that equation. So x squared minus 8x plus 16 breaks out to b. Now I can use this to get the right-hand side of that special form, which is a minus b quantity squared, which is x minus 4 quantity squared. Okay? And this class, we need this skill in order to make equations for a circle. Okay, ultimately for this class. All right, but then today we're gonna solve equations by using this method of computing the square. So I listed out the steps to solve the quadratic by computing the square. Quickly go over it. Step number 1 is to get the constant by itself on one side of the equation. I don't care if it's the left side or the right side, as long as it's on one side of the equation by itself. Step 2 is to make sure that the coefficient for x squared is equal to 1. If not, then we do have some steps to get rid of it or to make sure that it is equal to 1. And then step 3, to get the coefficient for x. So we're going to get that coefficient for x, and then we're going to half it, and then we're going to square it. We half it and we square it because what we did here. Okay, in order to get my b squared value, I halved it. I divided it by 2 for both. I divided it by 2, right? Negative 2 in this case, but the negative and positive, it'll work itself out. Okay, so don't worry about that. We halved it, and then we squared it, right, to get b squared. Yeah? So that's where this comes into play. All right? So have you guys ever played Bop It? Bop It? You know, it says turn it, twist it, pop it, right? Pull it. Yeah. So in math, I'm going to get the coefficient for x, right? 16. And I'm going to half it. square it. Just hopefully that'll help you memorize the steps. Okay. So we're gonna half it and we're gonna square it, right? And step 1 and step 2 class, it's already here, right? Get the constant on one side of the equation is done. Make sure that the coefficient for x squared is 1, which it is. So we got the coefficient for x, which is 16, which is, let me emphasize, positive 16. Okay. And then we're going to half it and we're going to square it. Whenever you half that coefficient, that's 8 in this case, squared. What did we get here by halving it? By halving it, for both instances, we got b, correct? b equals 4 here, b equals 2 here. So by halving the coefficient for x, that's what we did, we got our letter b, right? So whatever is inside, whatever I'm going to square is my b value. So when I square it, 64, that equals b squared. Okay? Does that make sense? And with this number now, step 4, we're going to add this number to both sides of the equation. Okay? So we're going to add 64 here, add 64 here. And there's a little twist when there's a coefficient on x squared, but we'll attack that later. So x squared plus 64, or I'm sorry, x squared plus 16x plus 64 equals 36 plus 64, that's 100, right? And then we're going to solve. We're going to factor it or use a special form to factor it out. Okay. So this becomes x plus 8 quantity squared. A plus b quantity squared, right? And we got our b value right here. Okay. Equals 100. So then I'm going to square root. So by square rooting my left-hand side of the equation, I got rid of the square. So that's x plus 8 equals plus or minus. Whenever I square root, I need that plus or a minus. What's the square root of 100? 10. So then I'm going to subtract 8 on both sides. So this is x equals negative 8 plus or minus 10, right? So embedded in here, there are two solutions. Okay, because it's a quadratic and it's a parabola, we have two x-intercepts of negative 8 plus 10 and x equals negative 8 minus 10. So negative 8 plus 10, that's 2. That is negative 18. Okay? And that's how we solve it using the completing the square, which is far more complicated than quadratic formula and factor, right? Yeah, that's why I skipped it in module 8. Okay? But quick question. If my x-intercepts are 2 and negative 18, that's my x-intercepts, right? Of the graph. Where is my axis of symmetry? Eight. It'll be at x equals 8. Yeah, because this 8 represents the midpoint between 2 and negative 18. Negative 8 would be the midpoint of 2 and negative 18. Yeah? Okay? So the axis of symmetry and my vertex always lies in the middle of my two x-intercepts. Okay? Okay, so anyways, let's move on to some examples now. Okay. So example 1, we have this. My first step is to get the constant on one side of the equation, which it is, right? The 11. It's on one side of the equation, so I'm good with that. My second step is to make sure that my coefficient for x squared is 1, which it is. Okay, so step 1 and step 2 are pretty much done for you. And I'm going to get the coefficient of x, which is -10. Take that negative with it. Okay? So we got -10. And we're going to play bop it with it, half it, square it, right? So -10 divided by 2 is -5. Squared, that's 25, right? We're going to take that number and we're going to add it to both sides of the equation. Okay? So this is x squared minus 10x plus 25 equals 36, right? And now I know it's going to be looking like this. My a value is x. My b value is here at -5. So I'm going to take the whole thing and just put it right there, -5. Okay? Take that whole number and just put it in. If you don't know where this comes from, take some time to factor this out using your factoring methods, right? You'll come out with x minus 5 times x minus 5. Okay? And in order for me to solve this, I'm going to square root it, square root this. So I have x minus 5 equals plus or minus. Please do not forget that plus or minus. Square root of 36 is 6. Add 5 to both sides. So we get x equals 5 plus or minus 6. So again, embedded in here, there are two answers. 5 plus 6, which is 11. 5 minus 6, which is -1. Yeah. If you guys come out with something in this lesson, what I need you guys to know is how to build this. Okay? If there's one thing in this lesson that you guys want to take out of it, is how to build that. Because this completing the square thing, right, is actually the foundation to building equation of a circle. Okay? All right. Five minus 6 is -1. 5 plus 6 is 11. Yeah. Okay. So my next one, it's your turn to try it out. Okay, so come and try it out here. Okay, so step 1, we get the constant by itself on one side of the equation. Check. Step 2, make sure that the coefficient for x squared is 1, which it is. Check. Get the coefficient. Step 3, get the coefficient of x, which is 6. And we're going to half it. Squared it. So that's 3 squared, which is 9. You guys think it's ridiculous, but it's going to be in your head now. And then we're going to add that number to both sides of the equation. So we have x squared plus 6x plus 9 equals 11. Now, instead of using that special form, because I've had a couple of questions about how do I get that, the special form, I'm going to factor this, okay? Using your factoring skills, give me two numbers that multiplies to 9 and adds to 6. 3 and 3, right? 3 plus 3 is 6. 3 times 3 is 9. So I'm going to split up the 6x into 3x plus 3x. Gather up the first two, gather up the next two, right? And I got that. Yeah. So here, I'm just factoring this out to show you that it comes out to be x plus 3 quantity squared. Okay. So x squared plus 3x, there's an x that's in common. So that's x plus 3. Here, there's a 3 in common. So that's x plus 3 as well. So since x plus 3's are in common in the parentheses, x plus 3, what's left over is x plus 3, right? So we factored this out to be x plus 3 times x plus 3, right? Now, since there's two x plus 3's, we can put them in one and square them like this, okay? Equals 11. And then we're going to solve it by square rooting it. Okay. So this is where actually it came from, the x plus 3 times x plus 3. By factoring it out, we know that it breaks out to be x plus 3 times x plus 3. Okay, or we could just use that special form. Okay. And then we're going to subtract 3 on both sides here to get x equals negative 3 plus or minus square root of 11. I cannot simplify this, so that's my answer. Yeah. Then you did something wrong. Let me ask you before, if you get two different numbers here or here, are you going through these steps of computing the square before you try and factor it out like this? Like, are you completing the square to this, or are you talking about this another general, not completing the square, not in this lesson? Okay. But you can come up with a different number if you're not doing completing the square. This activity here, by halving it and squaring it, we half it and we square it because we're building up that special form, right? Where it breaks out to be something plus something or something minus something squared. Okay, we want this. That's why we're doing this. Okay, but if you're doing this and you come out with something different, that means that you did this incorrectly. Yeah, and we did that in module 8. Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, that's a different thing that we're doing. Yeah. Hmm. Right here? Yeah. Yeah, you don't have to factor it. I just wanted to show you guys where the special form came from. Okay. Now these last two examples, we do have a coefficient that's not 1, right? For the x squared. So the first step, get the constant on one side of the equation, check. The next step, to make sure that the coefficient for x squared is equal to 1, which it is not. Okay? It's not. So there's one of two things you can do. I'm going to just divide everything by 2. Sometimes when you divide by this number, yeah, a fraction is going to appear. You just got to deal with it. Okay? All right? So that's x squared minus 3x equals 5 halves. So actually, I'm going to rewrite this. X squared minus 3x plus blank equals 5/2 plus blank. And that blank, class, is what we are going to do by doing this, right? We're going to get the coefficient of x, -3. We're going to half it, square it, pop it. So -3 halves, I can't simplify. So what is this, class? What is that? What is -3 halves in the whole scheme of this? No. It is a fraction, yes. But what is it? What value does it hold? Huh? The b value, right? That is essential that you guys know that it's the b value. Okay? Because look, when I square it, this becomes 9/4. So I'm going to add 9/4 to both sides of the equation, right? Do we know how to factor this? Do we know how to factor this right now? Class? No. Yeah. There's no two numbers that I can come up with that multiplies to 9/4 and gets me a sum of -3, right? Yeah. So what I'm going to do is I know my a value is x. And since I know my b value is -3 halves, I'm just going to plug it in here. Okay. And then 5 halves plus 9/4. 5 halves is 10/4 plus 9/4. That's 19/4. Okay. There's a bunch of fractions. Yes. Times 2 times 2. Because I needed the common denominator of 4. Yeah. Okay. So go ahead and try to solve this. And we will come back in a little bit. Okay. So here, when I solve it, I'm going to square root it on both sides. So this becomes x minus 3 halves equals plus or minus square root of 19 over, what's the square root of 4? 2, right? And I'm going to add 3 halves to both sides. So we get x equals 3/2 plus or minus square root of 19/2.
How can you make it over?
Well, now you know. Because the square root of 4 is 2. Square root of 19 is square root of 19. Square root of 4 is 2. Nope. So since they both have a denominator of 2, I can put it all under 1 and make it look like one of those solutions that I had when I used the quadratic formula. Awesome. Why are you guys trying to butter me up right now? Feel like you guys are gonna roast me. All right. We're good with that? Yeah. Last one for today. Okay? So step one, constant on one side of the equation, we're good. Step two, x squared, right? Doesn't have a coefficient of 1, so I gotta divide by 2. Divide by 2, divide by 2. Okay? So that's x squared minus 2x plus blank equals 8 plus blank, right? 16 divided by 2 is 8. So we're gonna get the coefficient of x, which is -2. We're gonna half it, and we're gonna square it. So that's -1 squared, so which is 1. Add 1 to both sides. So this side here, my left-hand side is x minus 1 quantity squared equals 9. Square root it, square root it. X minus 1 equals plus or minus 3. Add 1 to both sides. X equals 1 plus or minus 3. So I have two answers, 1 plus 3 and 1 minus 3. 1 plus 3 is 4. 1 minus 3 is -2. Cool? All right, that is the lesson for today. And that is completing the square. See you on the next one.